Welcome back to another episode of Real Chumps, where chatting about movies feels like hanging out with friends. I'm your host, Marcel, and with me as always is my co-host, Danny.
This week we discuss Us, directed by Jordan Peele, written by Peele himself, and starring Lupita Nyong'o, Winston Duke, and Elizabeth Moss, and many more.
In this episode, we discuss the many dualities found in the script, the horror elements that elevate the story, and what us means to us. But before we roll that intro, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.
Join in on that conversation by following us on YouTube at Real Chums or all of our other socials. With that being said,
let's roll that intro. I want to do another guess the movie based on its bad review.
Let's go.
Okay. This review, again, on IMDb is brought to us by Mr. Miroslav Milosevic.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to clean up a little bit of the grammar, but here we go. Again, it's a movie that came out this year, okay?
Okay. So I have to stretch my brain a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, he titles his review, he gives it a 1 star out of 10, and he titles it Poor Comedy. Top 3, the worst movie I have ever watched. Very poor comedy. The story is for a child. So boring listening and waiting for any good scene, but never happened. Too many inappropriate words. Too much touching in the middle part. Too much speaking in every scene.
Too much speaking?
Maybe there was one scene where co-star made a point with less words. Otherwise, every other scene was very bad. All this pointless story. Wait, how does this guy? Okay, a very pointless story and very bad jokes. Even at the beginning, it was so bad. It moves slow motion.
Oh, is this Rebel? No, this is not comedy.
Then he says, "This was so bad, I cannot believe I was in there for 2 hours. I spent 2 hours of my life on this."
Okay. This year.
Yep.
And it's a comedy?
He
called it a comedy.
Yes, it's a comedy. Yes.
Is it a comedy or
yeah, no, it's a comedy.
Okay. I'm like trying to think of
too much touching in the middle part.
In the middle part. Too much touching in the middle part.
And he's not saying like in the middle of the movie.
Dune? Yeah.
He's saying like people
bodies.
are touching themselves too much in the middle.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. For some reason, I'm like thinking it's not. It's a comedy, so it's not that. Is it connected to another movie?
Yes, to many other movies.
Okay. Is this? I don't know what this movie is. Give me the hint.
Okay, the last line of his review is, "The reputation of Hugh Jackman with this movie is disturbing."
Deadpool?
Yeah. Deadpool and Wolverine.
Oh, you said like
I said it was a comedy. Yeah.
No. You said like
it is connected
this
to
year. I thought you were like meaning earlier in the year, not like in the last 3 months.
It came out in May.
Yeah,
that's 5 months ago.
That's yesterday, bro.
It's this year.
I was gonna guess that and I didn't. I'm so mad. It's okay. There's so much touching in the middle part.
Too much touching in the middle part.
That's
this
so
guy
funny that he wrote that.
Mr.
We should make that a t-shirt.
Too much touching in the middle part. And then in the back just put the Deadpool and Wolverine logo. Love it. We're going to kick things off talking a little bit about this movie. We're again continuing our Halloween spooky thriller section or segment for the month with Us. But before we do that, here's a quick synopsis. A family's vacation turns into a nightmare when they are confronted by their own doppelgängers, or clones known as tethered, who seek to kill and replace them. As the family fights to survive, deeper truths about identity and society begin to unravel. I want to hear, first of all, relationship with this movie, what and 3 things that we liked or didn't like, and then we'll get into the meat of the conversation.
Look, this is the first time I'm watching it. I did try to watch it a second time. I only got a quarter of the way, or almost halfway through. But so I'm just gonna talk about the first time watching. I kind of this movie slipped my radar a little bit, in the sense like I knew it was coming out and it came out, but I don't remember much hearing about it, like a ton of.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because I just was
2019.
Yeah, that was a time period where I was like, did this come out pre-COVID?
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah. I think I was just I had just moved back. I was dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff family wise. I didn't do a lot of movie going that year. Tragically. And so I knew it had come out. I knew that people were excited for it. I don't remember off the top of my head how much bigger of a budget was this.
Well, this was a lot bigger because whatchamacallit, Get Out had a $5 million budget.
Yeah, so okay,
and this had a budget of $20 million,
so
which is still
small,
Yeah.
but compared to what he did with
Get Out.
Get Out. I mean, it was like tremendous, and I felt it in this at the very the first as we got into the film. I was like, this movie feels like they got a bigger budget.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that it was like drastically. There's just I think they were able to spend a little bit more on a camera that had, like a might have been a red or some other or an arty, or I don't know. It felt slightly crisper. And overall the aesthetics and some of the other things that went into it. So, pretty great.
What are some things that you liked?
Yeah. So the things I liked, I liked the story.
Yeah.
I liked the twists. I liked I liked the characters. The jokes hit harder. Like watching this the first time, the jokes was enjoyable. I don't know if I know what I don't like yet.
Okay. All right.
Because I think I'm still processing. If I was gonna say anything, I would maybe say, Winston Duke's character as Gabe, maybe a little weak.
Really? Oh, dude, he's my favorite. I love
I love Winston Duke.
Yeah.
I absolutely and the fact that he's anyways, but there was just a couple moments here and there that I felt like, and I don't know if it's just like initial watch because I'm focusing on Lupita's performance and her that overall experience, and some not there. But so I'm still gonna say I'm not fully sure what I don't like yet.
Okay. All right. Look, if you haven't listened to our episode on Get Out from last year, from Halloween, I love Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
Right. And when this movie came out, so it originally premiered at South by Southwest, got all the hype it merited, and I think I remember there was a lot of hype on this because Get Out was so successful, and now you have Jordan Peele's freshman movie, so to speak, right? No, that was for his freshman. This is his sophomore movie. And so there was just a lot of excitement around this. I didn't get to see it in theaters. I watched it. I think this is one of those where, unfortunately, my first viewing was on a flight later that summer or fall.
This would be a good flight movie.
And then I do remember coming home and just watching it again, and I love this movie. It's hard, and we talked about M. Night Shyamalan, right? Who did Sixth Sense, and then so much hype around his next one. He does Unbreakable, and then his next one being Signs, and so on. I see a lot of parallels here between Jordan Peele and M. Night, because they both they're both telling. One is telling human stories with elements of horror, M. Night, and then you have Jordan Peele who's telling stories about social commentary and social issues through horror, and they both knock it out with an introductory film, and they're slowly building up, and I just love Jordan Peele. Anyways, I love this movie. I think it's just as good as Get Out. I think a lot of people disagree with that, but I think it's just as good. Some of the things that I love, I love the story the same. I love how funny It is.
Yeah, it's a lot funnier.
It's a lot funnier. And not just that, but like he does a great job at putting like at balancing that tone.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think and we'll get into it. I just love the symbolism and metaphors throughout this.
I'm really pumped to be talking about this.
And I think and I had a great time with and I think Lupita Nyong'o is just incredible.
Absolutely incredible.
This is her first time like being the lead in a film, and she just knocks it out of the park
Completely.
Things that I don't know. I think this movie's incredible. I don't have any issues with this movie. I think if anything, no, I don't. Like I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, it's a little bit vague. It's purposely vague. It's not as the plot isn't as like fleshed out as Get Out, but it's purposely vague as to why the doppelgängers exist and how they go about. But like that's fine. Like that's not what we need to focus on.
I didn't have that issue because I knew going into this that like Jordan Peele is trying to tell. He's telling he like Shyamalan. I think it's a great comparison. He's telling deeper stories through a great story.
Yeah.
Right. A great, commentary and thought provoking, conversations through his films. We get that with Get Out. With Us, but I can definitely see people being like upset. Well, there's so many plot holes.
Yeah.
Why would they have this? And if this is I'm not gonna lie. I think that some people that I know would definitely be like halfway through the movie, this is dumb.
Yes.
And I think that they're missing the mark on, they're just missing the mark on what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that like, you're not, like, I think he tries to do some, setup. I also think that when you come down to this movie, me going into it, I don't know, just going to it, I knew that this is a movie that grows with you over the many.
100%.
Like watches.
Yes. And I think so. I watched it twice that first year. I just rewatched it and I got halfway through again watching it for a fourth time. I think it just it grows so much. It cooks better. Like the third, fourth, maybe even the fifth rewatch, right? Similar to Get Out. And because I know what's happening, I'm able to focus more on like the little Easter eggs or the little drops that he throws in there, right? And it just enhances the movie for a rewatch over and over and over again. Okay, but before we jump into it, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back. Thanks for listening to Real Chums. Before we jump into the full discussion of this episode, we wanted to invite you to join our email list where twice a month we share what we've been watching, our TV and movie recommendations, and commentary on the biggest headlines in the movie industry directly to your inbox.
This is just the start of what we have planned for our content. And by subscribing, you're getting the best seats in the house for what's to come. So head over to realchums.com/newsletter to sign up today.
Now back to the show.
All right, welcome back. We are so pumped to be talking about this movie. And we hope that you're as pumped as we are. We're probably going to get into the weeds of more of like the themes and overall. So I just want to jump through some of like the movie elements, the cinematic elements that come in play here, shot wise, the performances overall. Before we get into the deep like analysis and discussions about that. So, let's talk. You've watched it more than I have, so like give me your thoughts on like Peele's visual style differences that you feel like, or like do you feel like he deviates from Get Out? Or is he playing more to the story's like feel?
Yes and yes. I think like I love his long takes. And I'm not just talking like that beginning where we're zooming on the rabbit and we take like 3 minutes to go through the credits, but
that that might have been actually the thing I don't like. It's like, get moving.
But it's creepy.
It is creepy. It sets a tone.
It sets a tone.
I don't disagree with that.
I think it sets the tone. No, he does that so well in Get Out, and here he he doesn't overdo it. That's not what I'm saying, but like he definitely leans into that. And there are some beautiful long takes, even like when they're at the boardwalk, right? And we're just following them, and we cut here and there, but like we're just behind them. We're locked on Adelaide. Her parents are in front, and they're just walking. We see them arguing, or even as she's walking to the House of Mirrors. I love that. I think as we continue to watch these horror movies, doing these long takes really adds like this feeling of like uncomfortableness, right? I think we're so quick, especially like movies nowadays, where we have quick cuts. Going back to like Oppenheimer, right? Where you argue that no take lasts longer than 10 seconds, right?
I don't argue that. It's fact.
No, it's fact. Yeah. But like this movie just takes its time to build, to add to the tone, to add to the mood, but also to just let us sit with our feelings and really kind of ponder as we're watching.
Yeah.
And try to understand what we're watching, right? So I think that's something he definitely built on from his first movie with Get Out. But I think the first time when I watched this, I was like, oh, what additional commentary is he gonna have about race, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what this movie's about, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about like social classes and that distinction between the have and the have-nots, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. And so like I love that he continues to just make us think, through imagery.
Mm-hmm.
And because movie and cinema is such obviously a visual medium, he really leans into that. I was reading a quote a couple months ago from Denis Villeneuve, who just did Dune, right? And he says that he loves movies that have very little dialogue. And he goes to the movies for the imagery, right? And the visualizations. And like that's why he goes to movies. He says if he could watch a movie with no dialogue, it'd be perfect, right?
Interesting.
But like we get a taste of that here. Like, and not that there's no dialogue or the dialogue is poor, that's not it. But is that he really leans onto the visuals and the imagery, and he leverages that, especially in Us, to tell a story about duality, about symmetry and the juxtaposition between classes, right? Mm-hmm. And I just think he's just a master at it.
He's great. I really enjoyed the many like on shots where he like positions characters and scenes like directly in the center. Mm-hmm. Like their center frame. He's the symmetry. Some of the shots like towards the end where we're following Adelaide and Red, mm-hmm. with like where she's center frame. You see the escalator. You see like what they're looking at, but also very much just different moments that we get there. I also like really enjoy again your fact that like we get a lot of great facial just like. He goes for shots and where we get full facial expressions.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. I also want to say that like I really appreciated his use of, it feels natural. It's not natural. It's just like they really honed in on the use of lighting and how much the lighting and set design location spots that they found for this film really adds to everything that you just discussed and what we see throughout the film, right? We have a nice cabin. We have like the room that gets locked. We have like this downstairs where with the big mirror for like ballet, it's showcasing that she did a lot of work, but with the mirrors, mirrors in films in horror are always great.
Yeah.
We have the dark cabin, the nighttime wood shots, but we also have the juxtaposition towards the rich fancy neighborhood, the creepy carnival thing, not carnival creepy, it's just the carnival that ends up being creepy at different times because of what situations, costume design for all the interesting people, even just the tethered, All of that, I don't know, really just amplifies everything that the actors and the story for this film really comes into play. All right, with that, I actually wanted. I know for commentary we have, this is about class. I was actually thinking about immigration.
Yeah, which is a type of
Yeah, I
class.
guess you're right. You're right. We could talk about that. All right. So where do you want? I don't know where I want to start. There's a lot. There's a lot of places we can start.
Let's talk on the theme. So what is this movie saying? And I wrote, because I really sat down and I was like, okay. I actually did not write any notes until the very end, which I love writing notes in my movies.
I want to do it more. I'm always captivated in the film, and then I don't want to because then if I'm writing, I'm missing something, and I'm like, I just need to pause it. Are you pausing when you write your notes?
Sometimes, or else I'll just talk.
Oh, you do a voice memo. Okay.
Yeah, I do a voice memo.
Interesting.
But okay, so if I'm gonna break down the meaning of this,
yeah,
I think Jordan Peele uses a lot of elements like symmetry, mirrors. You just brought up mirrors, right? Yeah. Duality. He uses these elements. Essentially, they're being used to draw this distinction between the haves and the have-nots, but at the end, suggesting that they're the same. The only thing that distinguishes a poor person from a rich person is the circumstances that they grew up in, right? And we see that very much so at the end with Adelaide.
And her reveal.
Right? And the Adelaide that grew up in the tunnels versus the Adelaide that grew up, above ground with a family and other circumstances. And I think to me, and I want to hear your thoughts about immigration, but this is what the movie's saying, right? You have that the haves and have-nots are the same. It's just the circumstances that we're raised in, whether that be financial circumstances, familial circumstances, education, whatever that may be, they're the same. But how can we distinguish opportunities for both groups of people, right?
Yeah.
But I want to hear, and I want to talk a little bit more about these doubling techniques in the movie.
Yeah.
That he uses. But I want to hear your thoughts on why immigration came to mind.
I don't know. I think part of it was just there's the slave immigration of bringing it over, bringing people that were in chains, tethered, and play there. But also the fact that the fear of people coming and taking over. Right, that aspect of it, of the tether showing up and taking over their doppelgänger's life.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was the thought, and it wasn't deep. It was just the feeling, the one thought that came to me as I was watching the film. And I don't fully feel that's the full message, right? But that was especially as the doppelganger, as the Reds started coming in and they're trying to do their hands across America. Bit there was this sense of the fear of people coming in and taking over and not I don't know, having that aspect in a place where you don't want them there.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Right. It's not it's just, I don't know, there was a subtleness of I'm sure some people feel this is what immigrants are doing to us or whatever.
They're slowly hiding.
They're hiding among us, and they're taking over our lives and
replacing us, so to speak.
Correct.
Yeah. I like that.
Anyways,
let's talk. You brought up Hands Across America.
Yeah.
What is the role that Hands Across America plays in this movie?
This is the thing, because I was hoping...
What do you or let's start with, because not many people might know what Hands Across America is.
Yeah, I mean, they give us they give it an, I don't know if this is an actual audio broadcast thing.
Oh, yeah.
At the beginning, there's the opening bunny situation, but then they have the audio track of Hands Across America. And so I don't, but yeah, do you have, Did you do more? I didn't do more enough.
I was born in the late '80s, so I wasn't alive for Hands Across America. But Hands Across America was this this program that was put into place where people were going to donate, to homelessness, to people in need. And the idea was that people were going to hold hands, start from one coast, and make it all the way to the other coast, holding hands in presentation or in a symbolism of support, and we're all united and we're all here together. It ended up being a huge failure, right? I think less than like 30% of the proceeds actually went to the program to support.
Rough.
Everything else was just wasted. Keep in mind, this was like the 80s where we had Farm Aid and we had all of these charity events happening that didn't really do that much good, right? Money was generated, but like it didn't really go anywhere. And I think, at least in the United States, 80s, America is flourishing. People are making money. Wall Street, go watch Wall Street. And greed is good, says what's his face. But anyway, I think there was this element of like guilt across America that we're making money and there is yet all this homelessness and AIDS is flourishing and whatnot. And so like, which the movie leans into that, right? But it failed. And it's funny and it's interesting to see how Adelaide, that left such an impression on her as a kid.
Yeah.
To then as she, and again, everyone full spoilers ahead, but like that Red eventually just said, this is how we're going to come out and this thing that was supposed to happen or did happen, she probably doesn't know, we're going to show a united front and come across but the use of, again, Jordan Peele, so genius, the use of leveraging a failed charity event to spark an uprising
amongst these doppelgangers underneath ground,
amongst the lower class, so to speak, is just chef's kiss. It's so great.
It is. I also love the fact that, like, the commentary, when they actually are doing the Hands Across America, when they're trying to figure out what's happening with everyone coming up and the doppelgangers, the Reds killing going there. And it's like the news reporter, and they're like, "We're not sure what's happening. Oh, it looks like they're protesting, and this, like, maybe they're organizing." And it's that no one understood, even though like the whole goal, right, was to bring people together, and showcase a united front. And the person getting killed, we're gonna take this away. I don't know. It was pretty great.
Well, and it's funny because when they come out, they're holding hands, right? And, excuse me, Gabe, he looks at Jason, the kid, and he's like, oh no, his daughter. What does he say? He says something of like, what is this? Some kind of like meaningless art depiction? Like,
yeah.
And the girl kind of rolls her eyes.
Yeah.
And essentially that's what Hands Across America was, right? Yeah. So he's taking a little jab at it, of this guilt among the rich for them to feel good about donating $5 and saying, I did my part to help America come out of homelessness.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Right. And so I love that commentary that he uses. But let's talk about like the doubling. What do you see throughout this movie, visually or in the script, whatever, about doubling? And going back to the commentary of the Hands Across America's commercial. I don't know if it's a real audio commentary, but the voiceover says, this summer, millions of Americans will be tethered.
Oh, yeah. You're
together,
right. You're
right?
Probably not.
And I was like, ooh, caught that.
Nice.
Tethered.
I'm so pumped to watch this like more because I do think that like the more I watch it, the better, truly better it's gonna even be. And it will be. I do think this is like all of Jordan's characters or stories are gonna be, I think, legendary. So when it comes to doubling, one, I think they did a pretty great job to the filmmaking side of it, right? I mean, this would have been definitely a bit more challenging, but they did a phenomenal job. I think the when it comes to I don't know if I have thoughts where my thoughts are at when it comes to the meaning. What are they what is it they're trying to what are we trying to learn? Why is it that every individual has this tethered? You know, and the fact that they can't speak.
Circumstances, right?
Yeah.
So for our episode of Get Out last year, we did a list of all of the passive aggressive racial comments throughout the movie. I went ahead and started building a list of all the doubling. We can add to it. But let's talk about for example rabbits, right? Above ground, Adelaide has a rabbit stuffed animal that you see in the reflection of the TV as she's watching the ad. And also we see above ground Adelaide when they go to their vacation house, there's the rabbit that's sitting there. Whereas rabbits for the underground is just a very horrendous way of staying alive, right? They eat them live, uncooked, whatever, raw, and it just shows the duality of like the privilege of having a stuffed animal, whereas the people underground, it's not something you cuddle with. So there's one. They have to consume their rabbits to stay alive. You have this one might be reaching on my end. They're in the car and they're singing I've Got Five on It, right?
Yeah.
And Gabe is like, oh, this is we have to celebrate this legendary song, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, isn't this song about drugs? And he's like, no, but don't do drugs, right?
Yeah.
So you have this man who might be struggling with the duality of being a black man in America, where he wants to celebrate his black culture.
Yeah.
But the duality of saying like, but no, don't do drugs. Don't do drugs.
Or no, I would say like that was one. This song is about drugs, and yet he considers it a great, just a classic of his culture, or even just like music in general. And yet, it's about something that people, again, class, circumstance, and perspective of like what is available, and like the people who are icons for different classes, different depictions, and what's quote unquote good, because like there was a huge super good. Yeah, I like that.
Obviously we talk a lot about levels, the above, the underground. At the beginning when they're at the boardwalk, Adelaide's dad says, do you want a price from the first level or the second level?
Yeah.
Right?
You want to keep going and get it from the third level.
And what does she say? I want 11.
Yeah.
Symmetry, 1-1, right?
Nice.
We'll talk about Jeremiah 11:11 in a second, right? But 1-1. I think it also you have the use of scissors, right? They're two symmetrical blades, which I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. The only thing that's not symmetrical or asymmetrical in this movie is the fact that the tethered wear one glove versus not wearing two gloves.
So that was something that I kept thinking about, like, what is it, why they only wear one glove?
I don't know if it's like because this isn't that glove. I don't know if you know Freddy Krueger, right? He wears like a similar glove like that in his movies,
like a biker.
Like his glove is very, I don't know. That's all I was thinking. I'm like, that looks like the Freddy Krueger glove, and I don't know if it's just like a call or a shout out to that, but
I mean, it could be.
But yeah, that was the only thing. I'm like, I don't know if there's any meaning to just the one glove. I probably should have looked a little bit more into that. You have when they're at their friend's house and they've all been murdered.
Yeah.
Right. You have Beach Boys place.
Yes. Yeah. What's the song called? like it's like a happy-go-lucky song. What the freak? What is that song? I love the fact that song was playing and they're being murdered.
And then when Adelaide's family comes in, or no, she what's her face? Kitty says, "Call the police," right?
Yeah, and
then
it plays F the police.
F the police, and the so you have two bands from California,
Yeah,
but very
different
tones, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, something like that. I don't know. There's just a lot of these little hints. Also, like when Gabe comes out, when the family's standing in the driveway.
Oh, dude,
It's so good. But then he comes out and he feels the need to have to change his mannerisms.
Yeah.
And talk differently than how he does. So the duality of being, again, a black man in America. The interactions with the white family. I love Gabe. He's like, he bought that car just to screw with me, right? And he has his little boat, whereas Josh, I think, was the other guy, has the cool boat and everything. Yeah. And there's these interactions of going back to circumstances, right? I love how he buys his boat and Josh is like, "Did you get this? Did you get that? Did you get all of these things?" And he's like, "No." And that's because like Josh grew up with the circumstances of like boating and fishing every weekend or whatever it is, right? And Gabe didn't.
Yeah.
And so that feeling of having this rich white man saying like, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing." Yeah, because my circumstances were different, right? And even like the flare gun.
Yeah, I was gonna bring this up.
Go.
No, I just said I love the fact that we then get the flare gun later in the movie, and it doesn't even like it works, but not great
because he doesn't know, right? Because of his circumstances growing up, right? He wouldn't know. But also going back to like the tethered, when the tethered Gabe is going after him, any person above ground would know to not swim behind the back of a boat, right? Whereas this guy, brutal death, and again, because of the circumstances of knowing and growing up, he was able to defeat him that way. I love these little things. And I think the more you watch it, you pick up on these symbols and these metaphors of duality, of class, that I just think adds to the whole like viewing experience.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just so great to be able to write a script like that and be able to show things like that.
I also really enjoyed that there's the subtleness to all of this. Like it wasn't as jumpy, right? There wasn't as many like necessarily jump scares.
Right. Last week we talked about The Ring and how there were some like cheap scares there.
Yeah,
right?
Cheap scares. But that in this one, like it was just the overall subtleness. I mean, comedy was used definitely to help like slice through some of the tension that is built, so that. And I honestly, this could have been a lot like more unnerving.
Yes.
Than I like. I truly do think that like he put in the comedy on purpose for us to not I don't know, to maybe I don't know. I don't know what it is. Why? But I do feel like it's very purpose driven.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I like, because every time we get the families together, we start getting introduced, the doppelgängers, them having to even before then, right? The tension between Adelaide and Gabe at different times of like her still like not quite being vocal enough about different things, and then sorry, this is just, I realized the duality of like the girl not wanting to do track, and her parents, Gabe and Adelaide saying, "Yeah, you can do anything you want," right? Yeah. And even though she can, right? Like it's one of those things where like in her mind, maybe she feels like she can't, but they want to see that, I see that. I'm like, it hit so hard for me that one scene. I was like, Because I've been telling that to my oldest who's been doing gymnastics. I'm like, if you want to do like, let's do it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, I love that because as parents, you want to provide your kids with opportunities that perhaps you yourself didn't have, right?
yeah,
And you hope to be in better circumstances that perhaps your parents were in or whatnot, right? And be able to have and give opportunities that perhaps you don't have, right? And again, going back to circumstances, for Gabe and Adelaide to be able to say, no, you can do it. Just the Olympics, if that's what you want, then do it, right? But looking at someone like the tethered, who the doppelganger of the girl is just fast, but she doesn't have the circumstances to help channel that, is very different, right? And that, going back to that duality, that juxtaposition between the two.
yeah. I love that you brought up the quote of Villeneuve. Dennis, him not wanting dialogue. This movie, in a lot of scenes that you would maybe have the tethered speak, like they could have spoken and said something like pulled in more like desire, but they don't. All they do is that creepy smile. Like they just smile in the perspective of or they just stare at him, or like they're looking for something, right?
Grunt, the clicking of their tongue. Yeah, go on.
Oh man,
so good.
I don't know. I really appreciate how much of that is we're not using dialogue. It's like, honestly, to some degree, it's like, what are they going to do next? It leaves us unsure. And it's, I don't know, really, I really appreciated it. I think in the first watch.
Going back to these horror elements, right? Because you bring up a good point. This movie could have been a lot more slasher type horror, or could have used more cheap scares.
I don't know if it would. I don't think he would have necessarily used cheap scares, but I definitely think we could have had a lot better. Like, I mean, they have doppelgangers, right?
Yeah.
Like, there could have been a lot more of a moment where like a twist of, oh, it's a doppelganger. They just killed somebody.
Right. Yeah. And I think he leverages that from the script itself to be able to say, no, we're not going to have them talk. We're not going to really clear or be very clear on what their motivations are. That adds to the horror, right? And even like in the scene where Red is recounting like everything that happened, right? And we're getting the flashback from the first night at the boardwalk. You have Adelaide in the House of Mirrors, sees her doppelganger, and like she just slowly turns around with her like eyes wide open, right? Like another director, probably myself, would have been like, let's quickly cut to her and like sound design, give me something like a big boom, like to like scare, right? Yeah. He doesn't do that. And he just lets the mood and what's on paper, and sure, and of course, like what he did on a storyboard and whatnot, but he just says, slowly turn around. And we're not going to do a big cut. We're not going to zoom in to a big cut to your eyes. We're just slowly turn around. And that just adds to the horror of it, of what are their motives? What are they going to do next? And also maybe like lean into like the theme of like the lower class and the haves and the have-nots. Like, is this how upper class looks at the lower class? Like, are they in a constant state of fear of like
and shock,
right?
Yeah.
And so I think these elements of horror are really great. And you even talked about earlier about the use of lighting. Going back to that driveway scene,
so good,
so great. Like, I just love the idea of like having your antagonist standing there for like 2 minutes, probably longer. They don't do anything, and then the first time they do anything is when Red does the clicking and they all just like scatter.
Yeah.
Right? And the sound design, every time like they move and they're like crawling, it's like it's so good. This is what makes a good horror story. One, what is it that you're trying to say? Yeah. And we talked about this last week with The Ring. It got a little bit muddled with what was the message that we're trying to tell us. Here it's very clear.
Yeah.
And how do you use horror to help drive that story and drive your message forward? And it's done perfectly.
No, okay, so good. I think I want to talk about Adelaide
Yeah.
and the fact that we know by the end of the film, the big twist that we have is that the Adelaide that we see at this part of the film, for the majority of it, is truly a tethered, because she swapped herself for Adelaide as a kid.
Yeah.
Why make that the twist? How does that help to emphasize the messaging that we've discussed? And what does that mean for her son, who knows the truth?
That's something that I'm like, what does it mean for the son? I think that's like the biggest question.
That is the biggest
right?
question, yeah.
Excuse me. Because we are led to believe that the son knows, right? Because one, he I think only like once, maybe twice, she grunts like they do, but it isn't until like that final battle that Adelaide has with Red as she's killing her that she goes full on tethered, and the kid is hiding in that locker room.
Yeah.
So he sees, and we assume that he picks up that, oh yeah, mom switched.
I believe he sees her 3 times.
Okay.
I think it might be just 2, but I'm pretty sure it might be 3.
Mm-hmm.
Little, like there's a moment. I think there's 2 moments when they go to the friends, the white, the more privileged house. 2 moments, or moment there, maybe some other moment before he gets.
That's right. Yes, you're right.
Either there or when the car, like, he gets out. Anyways, so that he notices that, and then the final, like, where she where Red gets she kills Red and fully goes into more of like a state.
More so, yeah. But I think the way that final reveal adds to the narrative is that the whole time we're seeing, or we're being told, right, it's circumstances and whatnot. But for her to then have had the opportunity for her to make the switch and be able to grow up with better circumstances and better opportunities. I think there's a line when Red is telling Adelaide, like, I learned dancing, ballet. That's what I got out of you, right? Because earlier in the movie, the psychiatrist is telling Adelaide's parents, like, have her. How do we get her talking? Get her to communicate through writing or dancing, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that OG Adelaide didn't do, but now tethered Adelaide, or above ground Adelaide, gets to do. And that's an opportunity based on her circumstances that she gets to have, right? And there's that almost a resentment towards, or even a mocking, as Red and is dance fighting, so to speak, with her. And so I think that twist, which is what I love, it just drives the theme home.
It does. Yeah, so I think I knew.
Did you guess the
yes,
reveal?
I did.
You did.
I did.
Nice.
Did you?
No. And the first time I was like, oh yeah. I was like,
so
it got
pumped.
me good. It got me good. I like.
No, I guessed that she was probably that they had done the switch, and part of it was that because what is the story. The story's kind of like what I was like intrigued by why that she told the story, but then as moments later, kind of moment, and then she had, I was with the boy. I think I was more of like, I think I knew before. What's his name?
Jason.
Yeah. I think it was close to. I think it solidified for me when they were in the house and they were trying to meet up with their friends. That I was like, I think she might be. I think she might be the switch. And for me, I don't know if I know like what does that mean for the son, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, but like what does that mean for her relationship with Adelaide's relationship and Jason? Like, because it's not just Jason. What does that mean for Jason and his perspective as mom? But like for her, trying to talk through some of that, right? Because every single time something happens, she goes and shows affection to Jason.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. But at the end, when he's looking at her and he's still trying to process, and she knows that he knows, and he knows that she knows.
Yeah.
She kind of switches back for that little bit.
She like grins.
She grins.
Yeah.
Menacingly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's menacing, but it just feels menacingly.
Yeah.
So for me, and part of it is like, I think there's, I think as I think back to this film, and I'm excited as I watched the first part of it again, how much of it was like she's so reserved with Gabe. Gabe, I think one of my favorite. We didn't talk about favorite scenes, but I think one of my, maybe not my favorite scene, but I just think that I really enjoyed is when Gabe's trying to be sexy.
Oh yeah.
And he like tries. He gets into the tiniest bed.
That bed is so small.
Especially for Winston, dude. That guy's huge.
Yeah, he's massive.
And if you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. He's hilarious.
Oh really?
Oh,
Okay.
he's great. He's a great follow. So he's like, hey, and she's just like focused on her reflection and thinking about what's happening there, and like this place that brings back who she was. And it's, I think, again, it's one of those interesting things, like some individual, like, I think part of it is like the other aspect of the thing that maybe we didn't talk about, but I think the duality I think of, and how this implicates, like, how much as individuals who have made changes for their lives, going back to a place that puts them back in that kind of space affects them, and what that could do for, I think of drug addicts, right? They have made, if an addict or somebody who is maybe better than some circumstances or whatever, they go back to a place, they can easily go back into that, like, a thing of Hallmark movies, and like them go back to their old, the boss, she goes back and she starts to be country again, and like, not that that's bad. It's just saying, like, that is the ramifications, some of the circumstances, as you want to be, we want to be welcomed, right? To a degree, they felt, young Adelaide or Red, who is taken over and is adopted, as seen as a person who can teach, or that can do skills, right? I think that the duality of that dance scene where they're breaking down between Adelaide and Red as they reach out, I still think I need to, like, there's something more in that scene that we need, as the audience needs to fully understand it, and the ramifications of how that either drives other themes home, or that helps us to understand, like, what's happened with, there. Because, like, we get a depiction of the underground, the tethered, as completely kind of just like mindless
zombies, right? Yeah.
Yet when they accept Red as some kind of, not messiah, but like
a leader,
a leader
type, yeah, who
drives a purpose home, because this envision of the Hands Across America is stuck in her head or whatever, and she knows that that some one day they'll come back, or not, I don't know. They can do something about it, but they can't do anything about it unless they're together on it, or I don't. There's just, I don't know, and again, the Adelaide's performance, both as Red and her as Adelaide. Again, I cannot. Did she win best? She didn't win anything for this movie.
I don't think she did.
She should have.
She should have. And she's incredible in it. Like,
she's also in something else, or something coming out soon.
Oh, she just did the voice of Ross in The Wild Robot, and
Oh,
she was
nice.
in A Quiet Place. They won. That
Yeah,
came out
that
earlier
was the
this
one
year.
I was thinking of.
Um, but no, she truly is incredible. I do want to expand a little bit on what you're talking about duality. So, um, Jordan Peele, right? He said, I remember when the movie came out, he talked a lot about like this was a very personal film for him.
Mm.
And I remember when he said that, I was like, how can it get more personal than like Get Out, right? Because like he talked about Get Out being he thought of the plot or the story when he first met his wife's family, right? Because he's married to what's her name, the comedian from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh,
Um,
Diaz, not Diaz.
no,
The
the secretary.
secretary.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, yeah. No, what the freak is Chelsea? Chelsea. He's married to Chelsea.
yeah.
From Brooklyn Nine. Her real name is Chelsea. Also, what the heck? Chelsea Peretti. No, that's her name. No, is it Peretti? Yeah, Chelsea Peretti.
He thought of Get Out when he first met her family, right? Not that they behaved,
No,
right, but like, yeah,
the experience.
yeah, but
Or the
but
thought process.
the
of
thought
what
process
could
of what could happen. But then he said that this was more of a personal movie, and Jordan, his dad is black, his mom is white, and so he's talked a lot about this, like the duality of being a man who resonates with white people, isn't quite fully accepted among the whites, but isn't quite fully accepted among blacks because he comes from both.
I've made this joke a lot because I'm married. I have my wife. My wife's white, and I always make the joke like, yeah, interracial babies start stopping racism one baby at a time. But that's such a lie. Like, truly, as much as I want that to be the truth, right? Like, oh, if you don't know, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
but it does,
No, it does.
right? And even worse so, like as a kid, I grew up in an area where Latinos were actually pretty frowned upon, mostly because in adjacent cities that I grew up in, a lot of them were either in gangs or causing a lot of gang troubles or like, portions. The other portion is like, they took up the rougher parts of the city.
Yeah.
Right. Cause that's where some families settled, and that's kind of where they came to be. And so, because of that situation, I grew up in a place where there was a little bit more. My dad had a pretty good job. We were in a circumstance in an area where, a lot of white people didn't have a ton of Latinos around me. I did, but not to the levels some in other neighborhoods if I'd grown up at.
Yeah.
And I remember being in high school, being in a hall where a lot of the Mexicans and Latinos would hang out, and I would like there'd be some would speak Spanish, some they wouldn't. But I remember one day I had a friend who she was dating a guy, and I went to talk to him, and they'd like poked fun at me or something, and thinking that like, oh, just because I don't wear Dickies and and I am not from the more Latino area, I'm not Mexican.
Yeah.
And yet both my parents are Mexican. I've been to at that point I've been to Mexico probably a handful of times.
Mm-hmm.
And did all the things that go to the quinceañeras, go to the freaking tias, the party with tios, and where you like, I don't know anybody here, but you still go because like, oh no, your freaking cousin Sulana is having a thing, you're gonna go, and the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
And yet I was still looked at as like an outsider.
Yeah.
In that perspective, right? And it is really hard. Like that's why I'm like, part of me when I thought about this film, like it's not necessarily about immigration, but it's about the feeling of like trying to come into a location where, and the initial part for me was when the family's standing outside, and Gabe tries to be threatening, and then he comes back and he's like feared, and they come into the home, and like that overall feeling, I just am like, why do I feel like this is just how people feel about immigration. Like this is literally the depiction of like people think every single time I think about when we throw politics, they're like, oh, we got to build up a border, we got to like prevent immigration, or we got to like crack down XYZ, or like we need to provide a better opportunity, blah blah blah. Every little aspect you want to come at it. That ultimately, when people are scared, they either think, they're like, people just want to have an opportunity, and on the other side is like people think they're just stealing and taking over,
Sure,
invading their homes.
Anyways,
I don't know. It was.
Do you feel like you at times have to, quote unquote, switch between?
Sometimes,
yeah,
not as much. Partly because, I think I would have if my mom's family was here.
Yeah.
My mom is the only member of her family that's here in the States. My dad has many of his family here, but they're split. He's 13 of 13. He's a twin, and they weren't very connected. They weren't a big, like, that's the one thing that I would say that like I didn't like. The one aspect I understand it because I'm Latino and I saw it.
Yeah.
The aspect of like the big deep familyness when it comes, because there's like two sides. There's the Latino family that comes to America, and the as they better themselves, they want that for their family, and so they find that they're able to have means where they can actually bring family over, or they meet other Latinos, and so like their family was already here, and so like they have like the abuela there, and you have maybe cousins nearby, that sort of thing. I really didn't have that. I mean, I had cousins nearby, but we weren't very much connected, right?
Yeah.
And so when I go to Mexico, I do feel like there have to be like a bigger switch, and it takes me time to have to like, okay, no, this is like I don't have to like put on the white face.
The white face.
I don't. Sorry, I don't know if that's. Don't at me.
You're the white filter, maybe.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, sorry. I feel when I go to Mexico, sometimes I have to feel like I can like relax a little bit instead of have to be like the more, I don't know, not presentable, but like just the more warming aspect nature of Latin culture. Whereas sometimes here, when I'm with an individual, I always have to be like, look like I'm, doing great, or I'm like, I don't know.
Because of people's stereotypes and biases towards Latinos, you feel like you have to offset that and be on.
I have to like. Yeah, I don't know. This is getting deep.
Yeah, no, and I think this is kind of what Jordan is trying to like say here, right?
Yeah.
And also like him as a director who went from doing comedy skits, and now being seen as this successful auteur.
Yeah.
Okay, like I'm sure he's had these remarks of like, nah, man, you're a comedian. Like you don't
stay in your
lane, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't belong with us big guys, and he's proven that wrong, right? So I'm sure like this is also coming out in he's processing this through this script, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right. Like when you have, going back to your question, what does it mean with that final plot twist? I think there is a bit of guilt from her because she at first looks kind of like concerned, maybe because Jason knows, but I think there's a little bit of guilt of like, I took over, I came here, I had opportunities, I had a family, blah, 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 yeah. But then she just kind of owns it and gives that little grin there, right? But I think for individuals who have to navigate two worlds, and even myself as an immigrant, like to have when I put on a face when I'm with people of my culture, and then when I'm not with people of my culture, like where do I belong? And like, do I carry sometimes guilt for saying like, oh yeah, like you just immigrated here. Not that I'm in a better circumstance, but like I'm in a different circumstance than you might be in, or whatever. Like, do I have to juggle that guilt as well?
Yeah.
And yeah, right. And I think that's the duality of this, right? Of whether it be identity, racial identity, or social class, whatever it is, circumstances definitely shape us. But at the end of the day, we're all the same.
Yeah.
And if we can in the movie, in Us, in their case, they're all the same as they have the ability to be killers and whatnot, right? But in real life, we're all the same in the sense that we have the capacity to emulate love and acceptance, and we all bleed red, right? Like there's no difference, right? We can all be accepting in that aspect.
Yeah.
And that's why I just love this movie, man.
This movie is the final question is, do you like this movie better than Get Out?
I think, I don't know. I think I love Get Out so much because of when it came out, just the shock value of what it was doing.
Yes, I mean, right? I don't disagree with that.
And I think like it just impacted like the way you tell stories and the way that we obtain these these stories and whatnot. Like it was so impactful. But I love a good movie that just sprinkles symbolism and themes in it to just like pick out and talk, and I think this one does it more so than Get Out. I don't know. I love them just as much.
Yeah.
But for different reasons.
I will say, I think I agree with you. I will say this movie is a perfect example of what Ring, that we talked about last week,
could have
been. Like, it would have been so nice.
Yeah.
That if the Ring had nailed what they were trying to go for, the sub story of the themes, the thematic like elements for the payoff could have been in tandem. We could have been like, look at these two films, and they have like both films. The reveal is like the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's true.
Of both, if not, in that aspect, right? They both have subtle moments building throughout the scenario, whereas the Ring opts for cheap scares.
Mm-hmm.
Us goes for the comedic, like that kind of gives us the breath moments, and yet both of them, if the Ring had actually like doubled down on what is it, not just the Ring, but like that familiar family perspective of what they were trying to do, would have been beautiful. It honestly would have been awesome.
Yeah,
it would have been really awesome. But alas, this is what we get. So
this is what we get.
I'm grateful that we do have Us, and it. Oh man, this movie. I'm probably gonna watch. Let's see. He's got two more. He's got
Nope. And just then his next one comes out next year.
So I'm probably gonna watch Nope this weekend because I want to have Nope.
Yeah.
I want Nope like in my brain to ruminate for a year.
Before we talk about it next year.
Because like there's just, these movies need more time. You need more time to process. And I really appreciate that you'd watched it already. I like, again, I don't know if I have it like you. I don't know if I would say that I have anything that I really don't like. I think truly this movie is just a film that like you have to watch once a year.
Oh, definitely.
Because if you don't watch it or you're not rewatching it, it's you're losing out on such beautiful storytelling and like thought-provoking stories.
Yeah. Look, last thought. We've done 3 movies with plot twists.
Yeah.
Next week we're going to be talking Scream, which is, I mean, it's more of a misdirect on who the killer is, right? But I don't know. I just had this thought, like, are my favorite quote unquote horror movies the ones that like interject some kind of a plot twist?
Yeah.
Or was it just coincidence? I don't know. Let me think on that, and then I'll have clearer thoughts next week because we're not doing a plot twist.
With that being said, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Us. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. If you do like this episode, be sure to like it or leave a comment, a review. So it does help us get discovered, or share it. All those things are fantastic.
Lastly, we want to hear from you. What do you like about us? What do you not like? What did we miss? I want to hear your list of dualities and juxtaposition. You can connect with us any of our socials at Real Chumps, or feel free to email us at your@realchums.com. You can connect with me on Twitter at Marstrosity, MARCTROSITY.
And me at Rubio_TV.
Join us next week. We're going to be continuing. Look, we talked Scream last week, or last year, sorry. It was my first time watching it. We're watching Scream 2, and I am excited because I loved Scream.
You did.
Have you seen this one yet?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited. Go watch it, come back, and we'll talk about it next week.
Later.